The things that happen in our building are not the only things that matter. Things that happen in our local communities, in our homes, in our streets are important. But what happens around the world to people like us, but also to people who are not like us, are also very important. I'm sure you've seen and heard of the terrible atrocities that are taking place in Ukraine and other places in the world. But it's not just something that you see on the TV or hear on the radio. It's something that we can do, can change, can improve, can do something about it. We're fortunate to have a group of staff members, administrators from the elementary school and our high school go to Poland this past week to visit, to meet the people on the ground, experiencing it firsthand, but also to see the people on the ground who are helping, who are doing something about it, and seeing what we can do here in America to help and improve the world at large. And they're going to share their experiences, their story, to make sure that it's not just something that we see and pass by on the TV, on the radio, but that we feel it, that we know it's happening, and more importantly, we do something about it. Rabbi Beda.
Thank you, Rabbi Galper. Once upon a time, a man was walking down a deserted beach at sunset. As he walked along, he began to see another man off in the distance. And as he grew nearer to that person, he noticed that that person was a local native, and he kept leaning down, picking something up and throwing it into the water. Time and again, he was hurling things into the ocean. As our man got even closer, he noticed that the native was picking up starfish that had been washed up on the beach, and one at a time, he was throwing them back into the water. The first man was puzzled. He approached the man and he said, "Good evening, friend. I was wondering, what are you doing?" To which the native responded, "I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean. You see, it's low tide right now, and all of these starfish have been washed up onto the shore. If I don't throw them back into the sea, they'll die up here from lack of oxygen." "I understand," he replied, "but there must be thousands of starfish on this beach. You can't possibly get to all of them. There's simply too many. And don't you realize this is probably happening on hundreds of beaches all up and down this coast? Can't you see that you can't possibly make a difference?" The local man smiled, bent down, and picked up yet another starfish. And as he threw it back into the sea, he looked back and he said, "I made a difference to that one." Earlier this week, Mrs. Winkler, Ms. Hartstark, and Rabbis Hertzberg and Saltzman from our elementary school joined me to travel to Warsaw, Poland, in order to visit refugees displaced by the war in Ukraine. As you might have read in the news, the estimates are that there are literally millions of refugees who have left their homes, fleeing from death and destruction taking place in their cities, in places that we don't really know much about, like Kyiv and Kharkiv and Mariupol. Millions of people. And it's easy to ask, what difference could we make? In our 3 short days, we visited 4 different hotels which were housing refugees. In addition to that, we spent time at a Chabad house, which was basically transformed into a soup kitchen, offering warm meals for those who need it. and also at a Jewish community center which was collecting and distributing medical and other essential supplies to refugees and to the battlefront. Literally an hour after landing in Warsaw, we went to a Chabad house where about 50 other refugees were being fed a hot lunch, their only activity for a day, other than waiting around for some organization to process them and to send them to some other country where they can hope to be resettled. When we walked into the room, amazingly, everyone was excited to see us. Americans came here to see us? Why? After a few moments, the people in the room started sharing their stories with us, and we were able to offer words of chizuk and care, which were really meaningful to them. Seeing lots of young children in the room, Ms. Winkler, Ms. Harkstark, and my son Sammy, who joined us, decided it would be great if we could give them something to occupy their time and make them feel our care for them. So we ran across the street and found a toy store, and we bought dolls, matchbox cars, toy jewelry, bubbles, crayons, coloring books, and we handed them out to the children. And their faces lit up and hugs went all around. Just by being there, by showing them that we cared about them, their spirits were uplifted, their hope and their optimism solidified. I want to tell you about Nasya. She's a 16-year-old girl, and basically, she could be sitting in this room and fit right in. Along with her family, she had to leave her home and go to a foreign country where she does not speak the language, not knowing what they faced when they got there, nor knowing where they would ultimately end up. She was only one of 2 people in the room who spoke English, so she was our translator for the group. She was moved by our visit, and she was so moved by it, she pushed us to come the next day to visit her at a hostel, which is a low-cost temporary lodging. It's like less than a hotel, where a group of 80 refugees were staying. So we did, and it made their day too. These people were our starfish. We didn't end a war. We didn't return people to their homes. We didn't even set them up with new lives. But we showed them we cared, and it mattered. And at this point, you might be wondering, did I have to go to Poland to save starfish? Seeing what's going on in the world, hearing from Harry Ajmi, who spoke to you from this very pulpit just a few weeks ago, I felt compelled to have the Yeshiva of Flatbush represented in the effort to care and to make a difference. We gave up our time to represent all of you because we know you care too. And we know you would have done the same thing given the chance. And therefore, when I went, we went. In the next few minutes, I, along with Ms. Winkler and Ms. Harkstark, hope to share with you some of our experience. There's a short slideshow, followed by some thoughts from Ms. Winkler and Ms. Harkstark, and I'll wrap it up with one final thought.
We wanted you to see in our eyes that we care and we love and Yehudim all over the world, Yehudim.
והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והיא שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם. והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו, מצילנו מידם.
I needed to go. I had to go. I would have gone anywhere that there were refugees. I'm the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and my father was just like one of these child refugees after the war. And he always said that he learned how to live again when he got to Israel because of the kindness of strangers. He believed that he had no one left in the world, that he was all alone. But when he arrived in Israel, the people there cared for him, they educated him, and he began to build his life anew. My father has tremendous hakarat hatov to all the strangers who helped him survive. And so I felt that I too needed to see for myself what the refugees were experiencing. What we observed in Poland was painful, difficult, but also heartwarming, inspirational, and even at times uplifting. Our time there reminded me that in the midst of the turmoil and the darkness, we can find kindness, selflessness, devotion, and chesed. We were given an opportunity to listen to the refugees who were forced to leave their homes, unclear as to what their futures hold. Families who left fathers and sons and brothers in the Ukraine. Women who came there with their children, but whose husbands are now missing. We met doctors, dentists, and even, as you saw, a documentary filmmaker. All who need to build a new life in a new land, wherever that may be, and many who, believe it or not, hope to return to Ukraine one day. For me, this trip was not as much about what we did, but about what we saw and what we heard. And those images, those faces, and those stories will be with me for years to come. I've been thinking a lot since I got home about what more I could have done. But I probably would have needed to stay in Warsaw for weeks or possibly months. So for now, my job must be to tell their stories. One of the mitzvot on Chag HaPesach is l'saper sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. We are storytellers, and that's because a story is not easily forgotten. I was so honored to be with our group. We left not knowing exactly what we would be doing or where we might even be going. Rabbi Beda and superstar Sammy Beda, Ms. Harstark, along with Rabbi Hertzberg and Rabbi Zaltzman, opened their hearts and showed true compassion to all in need. We became a group of listeners. Rabbi Beda's constant words of chizuk to all he met made our new acquaintances both smile and cry because the words came out of his heart. He is a leader who thinks with his mind, but listens with his heart and soul. On this trip, having all of us spent so much time together, I also learned that the name Harstark means strong heart. Ms. Harstark's heart is strong, and at the same time, it is gentle and it is kind. I am grateful to our yeshiva that allowed us to make this trip, to Rabbi Sambler of the Chabad in Warsaw, and to his entire family, who feed and house hundreds of refugees, to Rabbi Shudrik, the chief rabbi of Warsaw, to Agnieszka in Lublin, to Ola, to Nasya, to Basya, and to all the heroes who have put their lives on hold to help the refugees begin their new lives again. I am in awe of you. May Hashem continue to give them strength as they continue to do God's work, and to all the refugee families. May they find the peace that they so rightfully deserve. May this holiday of Pesach bring them their true chayrut, their true freedom. Shabbat Shalom.
I want you to know that I've been thinking all day about what I wanted to say to you. Basically, up until the moment I walked into this room, I wasn't really sure, because it feels like a big deal to me. I'm asking myself, what do I want you to know about what we saw? And what do I want our community to learn from our experience? And the truth is that our trip to Poland this week made me think about two Jewish values that sometimes seem like they're at odds with one another. The first is arevut. Chazal state, Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. It means that Jews are responsible for other Jews. That's one value. But there's another value, Tselem Elokim. The Torah states that all human beings are created in the image of God. And this suggests that all human life is equally kadosh, regardless of one's religion, ethnicity, nationality, or any other marker of difference. Of course, rather than seeing these values as contradictory, it is important that we view them as complementary. As Jews, we are not only uniquely responsible for the welfare of other Jews, we are also responsible for preserving the dignity of all humankind. We care about our family, but we also care about the world. When there is Jewish suffering, and when there is any human suffering, we are called to respond. I want to share two experiences I had in Poland that I think capture the essence of each of these values. Our first day in Warsaw, we visited a hotel that was taken over by the Jewish Agency for Israel, which is probably one of the largest Jewish nonprofit organizations in the world. They had rented out the hotel in order to provide lodging and food for Jewish Ukrainian refugees. And in addition, they were helping anyone who wished to immigrate to Israel to make aliyah. They had already sent people on a plane to Israel and were coordinating additional flights. To me, this was a remarkable display of arevut, the powerful bond of the Jewish family. This is a Jewish organization based in Israel looking out for the well-being of Jews around the globe. Many of the individuals we met were understandably holding out hope to return to their homes and families and businesses they left behind in Ukraine. But for those seeking refuge elsewhere, Medinat Yisrael has a chok hashvut, a law of return, that ensures that all Jews have a place to settle in the Jewish homeland. This, to me, is Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. But now I want to talk about Tselem Elokim. On our final day, we helped the JDC, another Jewish humanitarian organization, sort through tens of suitcases filled with donated supplies for refugees, from medicine to Band-Aids to toothbrushes to toys for kids. The first aid items were being sent to the battlefront, and everything else was being used to stock a free store for refugees who arrived in Poland empty-handed. Just to give you an example, there was a woman asking me for help finding a blanket. They needed the most basic necessities. The recipients of these items would of course be Jewish or not Jewish. This detail was not even of remote importance. What was important was that they were going to people in need. What was important was living out the Torah value of Tselem Elokim, that as Jewish people, we are responsible for preserving the dignity of all humankind. We spent a while there, working alongside a number of other volunteers, and when I left, I was embarrassed because I realized we never introduced ourselves to one another. I didn't ask them their name. I didn't learn anything about them as individuals. I don't know where they come from. I don't even know if they were Jewish. And even though my first reaction was to be embarrassed, my second thought was, how remarkable that our common humanity, our common Tselem Elokim, was the only important thing that united us in a sense of joint purpose. So why do I share this with you? I think it's easy to sympathize with and feel responsible for people who are close to us. If God forbid someone in our community is in trouble, we do an amazing job of showing up and figuring out how we can help. But sometimes it can be harder to sympathize with and feel responsible for people who are farther away, either because they live in another part of the world or because they are different from us, because we don't share a religion or a nationality. They become other. There is us and there is them. If there is one message I want to communicate to you about our trip, it is that we got on a plane to a country far away in order to, in some small way, respond not only to Jewish pain, but also to human pain. It is a Jewish responsibility to embody both the value of arevut, looking out for our fellow Jew at home and abroad, and also the value of tzelem Elokim, looking out for the welfare of all humankind in order to make the entire world a better place. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Ms. Harkstock and Ms. Winkler. As we head into Shabbat, and not long after that, Pesach, I want to share one final reflection. The people that we met in Warsaw, Rabbi Stambler of Chabad, a Mossad agent from St. Petersburg, Russia, who was transferred to Warsaw to help the Jewish agency, the volunteers at the JDC, Basia, who left her position as a chaplain in the Ukrainian army to help out hundreds of refugees, Nasia, the 16-year-old girl who became an adult overnight caring for a group of 80 refugees. They were all different, but one thing was common. None of them were trained to do what they were doing, and none of them sought that as a calling. However, when the need arose, they did not let that stop them. They saw the need, and they jumped into action, and they are succeeding grandly and making a difference. Sometimes we doubt ourselves. We're uncertain about the difference we can make. But if there's some message I want you to leave with, it's that I want you to know that if you follow the Torah's values, such as Tzelem Elohim and Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, you can make all the difference. From Ukraine to Eretz Yisrael, I call on Rabbi Sklarin to say a few words.
As many of you, some of you might not know, last night there was a terrorist attack in Israel. Many of people from our community are there now. Many people we know are going there. And the peace in our homeland is very important. The peace in the world is important. And I think we would be remiss to leave today without praying for peace both in the world, as Ms. Hartstock said, in general, but also in Eretz Yisrael. So I'd like to, if you just look at the news, I think it's important to pay attention that last night two men were killed when they went out to eat in a cafe. One of them had been engaged the week before. Another person is still in critical condition, and others are wounded. This is the fourth attack in 2 weeks across the country.